More states of the Federation have stepped up measures to combat the activities of criminals masquerading as herdsmen. That's according to an investigative report by a sister outfit, This Day newspaper. It was gathered that the weekend state governments, in conjunction with the police and other security agencies, have devised various means of checking the influx of herders and monitoring activities of those already in their domains. The effort, it was learned, were geared towards preventing the ongoing crisis in Oyo and in those states where communities and government had loggerheads with herdsmen from spilling into more states. The Ondo State government and some communities in Oyo State had last week given the herdsmen ultimatum to vacate forest reserves, citing their alleged involvement in kidnapping, rape, and killings in the state. However, in a bid to de-escalate the tension, governors of the Southwest Geopolitical Zone are built to have a meeting later today with the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, MACBAN, the umbrella body of herdsmen in Nigeria. As well, welcome back. But this has gone to the press release. All of this snowballed into what we're seeing now over the weekend, last weekend. I mean, I'm sure you were monitoring with keen interest while you were away.
You know, and you did raise this issue about Oyo State in particular before I went on leave the previous week. And you said, you know, not enough attention was given to what was going on in Oyo State. And I totally agree with you. It's something that has left to fester over the while. And it's troubling. It's troubling. I think this makes a good case for those calling for restructuring. That word has been bandied around, different connotations have been given to it, but I think that restructuring is not about dividing the country. It boils down to resource control. It boils down to devolution of powers. The federal government doing less and earning less, taking less, and giving the states resources and power to control their resources. Because when you look at it, it's not just the security threats to it that we are seeing an increasing profiling of a tribe. Because you hear, for instance, killer Fulani herders, you hear Fulani kidnappers, and all this while, nobody has done anything concrete. So it is good to see that there's a meeting between the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association. Some people I know agree that, you know, that is the association representing this group of people. But when you look at what they do, I think they would stand in this instance. So it is good to see that meeting between the governors of the Southwest and Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association. But you know, how coherent is this meeting? Is this a knee-jerk reaction? Is it a piecemeal solution? Because we need beyond that. It has gone beyond that. Like I said, this is beyond security threats. It is now a threat to unity, the unity of Nigeria. And for some people who say, you know, I was monitoring, like I said, the former president of the 8th Senate and National Assembly, Dr. Bukola Saraki, had a series of tweets. And he said something that struck me. He said, there's a deafening silence by critical stakeholders that should be speaking at this point in time, and we have not heard anything from them. It is dangerous for the unity of the country. Some will say the president is a Fulani man. They are leaders of thought from that region of the country. Have they done enough? I think I would like to agree with people who have said not enough has been done by leaders of thought, by those who should speak louder at a time like this. We saw the controversial statement from the presidency as a reaction. That is terrible. It is disgraceful that we are having such reactions, because there's a debate again. If you look at the statement by the Ondo State government, it did not ask herders to vacate the entire state. It says vacate the reserve, the forest reserves. They are two different things. But again, as with everything in Nigeria, we politicize, we ethnicize, and it is dangerous.
Dr. Abati.
Well, it is not true that critical stakeholders have not spoken up. In fact, if there is anything, it's the voice of the critical stakeholders that we need to worry about, and how that, in fact, further deepens the division within the country, and how the farmers-herders conflict, or the issue of herdsmen in the southwest of Nigeria, has also further raised anxiety about the nature of the union and the circumstances in which we have found ourselves. Some of the stakeholders that have spoken up include Professor Wole Soyinka, include former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, whose earlier statements on this issue have been circulated, includes Femi Fani-Kayode, who has also spoken up, includes Ganiyu Adams, includes the Alaafin of Oyo, Ikú Baba Yeye Lamidi Adeyemi III, who in fact wrote a personal letter to the Oni of Ife. And the list can go on, and the most notable among persons who have spoken up who seem to be the ethnic gladiator, if you like, ethnic activist, freedom fighter, as some people call him, Sunday Adeyemi, a.k.a. Sunday Igboho, who seems to have, Sunday Igboho, who seems to have shown an interest in what is going on in Ibarapa East and also Ibarapa North, and who indeed went the extra mile to give an ultimatum, a deadline, to the Fulani community in a place called Igongon in Ibarapa East. And the Seriki Fulani of that community has also been in the media protesting about how that deadline expired, and now Sunday Igboho went back to that community to enforce that deadline. So what are we dealing with? At one level, we're dealing with the responsibility of the state. And in that regard, many people have condemned the Buhari administration, that the role of the Buhari administration in this matter has been less than admirable, because it will appear, many of the stakeholders argue, that the Buhari administration has been taking sides. When a similar situation arose under the Obasanjo administration, and there was an ethnic dimension to it, it's on record that President Olusegun Obasanjo, as he then was, descended on the OPC, and Ganiyu Adams at that time, was, if you like, drawn in by the Olusegun Obasanjo administration. And people make that comparison. This is this time that Fulani herdsmen, as they are called, are involved. The federal government has been behaving as if it is supporting one side against the other. So that is one issue. Should we have a federal government that takes sides where there are issues of security or ethnic conflicts? The second issue is the emergence of a Sunday Igboho, who, as an ordinary individual, you can give him whatever label, is the one who had to stand up in Oyo State to say this cannot happen in our region. So it represents a resort to self-help by individuals who consider themselves powerful and influential in communities. That, in my view, is a prescription for mayhem, for anarchy, for chaos. No matter what anybody says about Sunday Igboho's spiritual power or influence or the kind of, following that he commands. And it is very curious that he and the state governor are talking at cross purposes. People have also pointed to the fact about restructuring, that you have this kind of situation because Nigerians are not happy with the arrangement. How can people come from a part of the country and they insist that they will do as they wish in that part of the country? For the simple reason of proximity. The proximity in this case being the Seriki Fulani in Egongon, having been quoted as saying that is there a man that is the president of Nigeria, and that nobody, whether it is Akeredolu in Ondo State or Sunday Igboho in Oyo State, can tell them how they can operate in another part of Nigeria. Previously, when this subject came up, and Garuba Shehu, speaking on behalf of the president, raised the issue about fundamental human rights under sections 41 and 42 of the Constitution. I had said yes, section 41 and 42 should be inviolable under the Constitution. However, we have this kind of situation because of the lack of sincerity on the part of those that govern us. People quote the Constitution when it is convenient, and the people themselves do not see enough sincerity on the part of government, either at the national level or at the subnational level. However, the silver lining in the cloud is the fact that today we're told that the governors of the Southwest are going to meet with the Miyetti Allah in the southwest of the country. We hope that that conversation will restore peace. And there are other groups of the Miyetti Allah in other states of the Southwest who have been saying, look, they want peace, everybody should be committed to peace. And over the weekend, we were told that the the Commissioner of Police of Oyo State was given the directive to arrest Sunday Igboho, and you had Sunday Igboho saying nobody in Nigeria can arrest him. But I think it's enheartening that at the end of the day, that was peacefully resolved. The Commissioner of Police had a meeting with Igboho. I think they both addressed the press. So the Commissioner of Police in Oyo State has shown that she's a very sensible woman, and that indeed if they send her on the message of a slave, she will deliver the message as a true born. And we hope that peace will be resolved in both Oyo State and also in Ondo State, and that leadership will prevail, and those who want to burn down the communities will exercise restraint and exercise common sense, which seems to have been lacking in the last few weeks in the handling of this matter in the Southwest.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Bati and Adeswa. That's all on news, and now we'll take a short break. Then when we return, we'll have Michael Wilson, Adeswa Amara, Aaron Akerjala to join us for updates on global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities around the globe. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. Moving on to business update now, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Michael, great to have you.
Morning. A sort of limping tone, really, about the markets this morning. Stories about vaccine delays and possible roadblocks, if I can put it like that, in the Biden 1.9 trillion stimulus plan. Again, these are international issues and they are weighing on things, but it shows you how digitally hyper-connected we all are, and therefore the one little story tends to have an influence across the markets. And the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines, it's not like getting an Amazon delivery. It's not going to happen overnight. So that's part of the problem. I've got a very important story for you, which just before we hit the markets, about rates soaring in China. Now, people are obviously still going to China to get their export. What's actually happening is a crucial shortage of containers and shipping costs. It's driving up shipping costs, and the pandemic and uneven global economic recovery propping up Asia, although other parts of the world have been hit. Industry watchers and desperate companies are paying premium rates for containers right now. This affects everybody who wants to ship containers from China, because what's been happening is that China has been exporting a lot, but importing not quite as much. So a lot of containers have been going back empty to China, and therefore there's a shortage of them around the world. So people are paying quite heavily for those sorts of things. Staying with China, and it's overtaken the US as the biggest destination for foreign direct investment in the world right now. The Nikkei then rising up a half, the Kospi up almost 2%, and Shanghai Composite up 0.5%. Chinese retail investors are also piling into Hong Kong retail stocks this morning as well. So let us turn our attention to the United States and recap what's going on there. Whatever the noise about it, the entire value chain is very, very complicated indeed, and doubly so since a lot of these vaccines are double shotters. In other words, one shot and then wait and then another one. So, and also the much mooted Biden stimulus package has been priced by markets as sailing through Congress. I've been saying for weeks now, I don't think this is going to happen. I feel as though it needs a 60-vote majority, at least a 50-vote majority to get over all the legal problems. But watch for this. Watch for the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine update. That's expected at the end of this month. And if that were to happen, and remember, it's a one-shot vaccine, that's very important indeed. This will probably be about the most significant change in vaccine around the world. If it gets shipped out, then that will shoot the markets considerably. In the UK, firms that export to the EU are being encouraged to open EU subsidiaries. I don't know whose idea this is. It's a how completely politicians misunderstand business, but that's the advice at the moment. Naturally, the government has denied that advice, but that's what a lot of businesses are actually saying. As far as retail's concerned, the big news this morning, apart from ASOS, which is a company you probably heard of, Boohoo is buying Debenham. So in other words, the big retail stores are actually moving out of business. No relief as far as jobs are concerned, and they're not buying the stores themselves. As far as oil's concerned, I'm going to shift to commodities now. Official commodities, official inventories in the United States rose by a considerable amount. So that's caused a bit of profit taking this morning, and gold traders, well, basically just chasing their tails as far as the market's concerned. So week ahead then. Fair amount of data in Asia and South Korea. US Q4 GDP in the United States. Europe consumer sentiment. Germany too, and big results from Apple, Microsoft and Facebook. But the one thing that people will be looking for is the FOMC meeting and the minutes from that. The Federal Reserve will leave rates completely unchanged, but what we're looking for is what they feel about the US economy right now and whether the quantitative easing, which is $120 billion a month, that is a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination, will continue or indeed will be increased. That's your global view on what is here a very snowy Monday morning, actually.
Okay. Well, Michael, a number of quick things. First, about China. China was deploying fighter jets, not reconnaissance jets, in the South China Sea against Taiwan over the weekend. And this is the same China that has been talking about having better relationships with the United States in the last 48 hours or thereabouts. What was that all about? Is it an act of provocation? China says it's asserting its sovereignty, which is disputed over the South China Sea. Secondly, over the weekend, about 10 provinces in China were talking about the digital yuan, whose objective is to see how they can displace the dollar, as an international major currency. Is that an objective that is achievable, or China is just doing all of this, what is that your famous word, showboating? Sometimes you call it diplomatic megaphone on this program. And then finally, in Europe, there's this upswing of reaction against Russia and calls for sanctions from EU countries. Now, what kind of sanctions? And would sanctions have any impact whatsoever with regard to the Alexei Navalny issue in Russia?
Okay, I'm not a political analyst, so I'll do the business stories. As far as China's concerned and the digital yuan, it is a possibility, but I think it'll take a long time. The dollar is something which tends to work throughout the world. If you go traveling and you want to take a portable currency with you, never mind about trade, never mind about industry and the rest of it, never mind about big corporate payments, you tend to take dollars with you. As far as the EU and Russia is concerned, well, quite surprising actually, because I'd be interested to see what the United States thinks about the EU stance towards Russia, because if you remember, what the EU wants to do is it wants to disassociate itself from being too dependent on Russia as far as energy is concerned. But the Nord Stream pipeline is something which is standing in the way of that. So Germany actually is breaking away from its EU cousins to say we will be dependent upon Russia. That will not go down very well with the United States. And the EU itself, almost on the same day that the US was inaugurating its new president, and we were wondering about what its policy might be with China after Trump, the EU was doing a deal with China about foreign investment. So it's all very, very mixed up indeed. I feel as though there's a lot of showboating going on. I still feel, though, that China, if I can talk about that briefly, is a country which wants to occupy the world stage. And if it wants to do that, it will have to do it on the terms of the world stage and not its own terms. And its own terms are what it's pursuing at the moment.
All right, two quick issues. Number one, the first question would be, what are your expectations for the Fed meeting? This is the first time since Biden got in the Fed meeting. And secondly, I asked about this last week, but I'm not sure you got the slant of what I was saying. The farmers' strike in India, what does it portend for India? These farmers have been on strike for a while. Two quick questions.
Right. So as far as the farmers are concerned in India, I would imagine, I don't know the detail of it, but I would imagine that what's happening there is that it will actually have a big effect on its economy. But it still is a country, as I think I said last week, that needs to have some kind of governmental control over it. And it doesn't have that. I would have expected Modi to have done that years ago, to have actually worked out which parts of its economy are actually important. So the farmers' strike will have a huge effect. The big thing is to watch, as far as India is concerned, the price of onions. That is crucial to everything that happens there, because it's such a part of their cooking and what they actually do. You think I'm joking, but it's actually extremely serious. Your other question was?
The Fed meeting. What are your expectations for this meeting of the Fed?
I touched on the Fed in my overall talk about this morning. They will leave interest rates unchanged. We'll be looking at it with interest to see whether or not they increase their QE system, which is currently running at $120 billion a month. Now, if they do, that says a lot about the economy. We'll wait for the jobs figures to come up. Joe Biden has Janet Yellen in charge there. She knows how to handle a crisis. She was good during the 2008 financial crisis. She has the ear of Wall Street. We'll see. But that's what I'd be looking for when we hear the FOMC on Wednesday.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. Pleasure to have you as always. For update on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeso Omoro is here with us. Adeso, it's a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you so much, Rufai. Well, according to the latest tally from the Johns Hopkins University, so far, 99.1 million coronavirus cases have been recorded globally. The United States remains the most affected country, surpassing 25 million cases yesterday. And in Nigeria, the country recorded 964 new cases of coronavirus infections in the last 24 hours. Lagos State pulled in 360 of those cases. It remains the epicenter of the disease in Nigeria. And this is the lowest figures we have seen in recent times as regards the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria. And speaking of Lagos, the government of Nigeria's coronavirus epicenter has revealed it is in talks with some of the vaccine manufacturers, including Pfizer and Moderna, to purchase vaccines for its residents. Governor Sanwo-Olu made this known during an interview last night on television. When he was asked how the government intends to fund the vaccine, he says his administration is engaging with private sector to help raise the needed funds. He said although the government had earmarked billions in fighting the scourge of the pandemic, he noted that the amount wouldn't be enough, and so they're talking to their friends in the private sector. He didn't exactly say when these deals will come through and how many doses will be purchased directly from these manufacturers. But he says that Lagos hopes to achieve herd immunity and not vaccinating its entire population. On a broader scale, there seems to be light at the end of the very, very dark vaccination tunnel, COVID vaccination tunnel in Africa. The president of the Africa Export-Import Bank, Benedict Oroma, in an exclusive interview with Arise News, revealed that the bank has earmarked $2 billion for COVID vaccines from a group of manufacturers to arrive as early as March. Let's take a quick listen to some of what he had to say.
Our Herdsmen Bank is putting in place the advanced procurement commitment guarantees. The Africa Medical Supplies Platform, the digital platform we developed in partnership with Mr. Strive Masiwa, the AU envoy for COVID-19 procurement, the Africa CDC, UNECA, which we are using today to distribute COVID-19 materials, is the platform we use to distribute the vaccines. Allocation has been done by way of population. The total cost of the vaccines is about $1.8 billion. So we will be sorry to approve us.
Mr. Benedict Oroma, we'll go on a quick break. When we return, more details on COVID-19. Stay with us. Glad to have you back. Well, the Lagos State government is in talks with manufacturers of COVID-19 vaccines for purchase of the vaccines for its residents. Afrexim Bank is also in direct talks with manufacturers for vaccine jabs for the continent, but it's not also rosy for the African continent at the moment with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, in a separate development, Dr. John Nkangasong, the head of the Africa CDC, says he's extremely concerned about the second wave of the coronavirus. That's because the mortality rate in more than 20 African countries at the moment is higher than the global average. Africa coronavirus case fatality rate has risen alarmingly to 2.5% higher than the global level of 2.2%. That's according to him. Now, there are 21 countries on the continent with a rate above 3%, including Egypt, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Sudan. And finally, it is no longer news that Israel is outpacing the rest of the world as regards COVID vaccination drive. However, what is news is that early data from Israel suggests that the efficacy of one dose of the Pfizer vaccine is around 33%, and that's much lower than the 89% efficacy UK scientists had revealed earlier. The Israeli health minister said that they are seeing cases of infection after first jabs, but they are also encouraging news such as less severely ill people, less hospitalization. Israel says it's deciding to stick to the instructions given by Pfizer on how soon to give the second dose after the first, and this could radically alter Britain's policy of delaying the second jab so that more people can have the jabs all round.
I mean, very well said. Good you raised Israel. I was watching the Andrew Marr show yesterday on BBC One, and he was interviewed. I mean, the interview was supposed to be around the progress and the development, how Israel has been able to crack this. But when he came out with this study, it was quite very staggering, the fact that a lot of people were getting reinfected. But there was one thing that he said that was very instructive. That's the Minister of Health in Israel. He said, please, once you take the first jab, don't think that's all. Yes. Still use those non-pharmaceutical means, protect yourself, wear your face mask, wash your hand, and let the hygiene go on as much as possible. And it is really incumbent that a lot of people do that. Infection rate is still growing all over Europe. In France, about 18,000 daily rates now, which is quite staggering. There's a story coming out on Norway that was talking about the fact that out of the over 80-year-olds they gave the vaccines, about 29 of them passed. They're still investigating what might have caused the death, but I think now they're trying to cease giving the vaccines to people over 80 years of age after they investigate what has caused that death. Nkengasa was very right on point from the African CDC, talking about the fact that so it's been proven now by what Nkengasa said that there are a lot of myths out of Africa. The myths like, the virus doesn't kill Africans because we had former BCG vaccine, and a lot of people wrote big literature and narrative on it. It's all a lie. Our fatality rate now is beginning to trump that of the rest of the world. Our fatality rate is 2.5%. The rest of the world is 2.2 people. So what it means invariably is that COVID is now killing more people in Africa than the average threshold in the rest of the world. And it is something we should look forward to. So Africa doesn't have an immunity as we talked about. I mean, I don't want to go there, but let me go there a little bit. Maybe what Bill Gates said the other time is beginning to ring true now, that he doesn't know why all of this. We don't have dead bodies on the street and things like that, but we should look at the trend and see how to buck the trend, because our fatality rate is increasing, and it's now more than people in other parts of the world. And I think all hands must be on deck to investigate why that is the case. And I'm still knocking on the door of Dr. Ihekweazu this morning. I know he's watching the show. He watches every morning. Please, we'd like to get the result of the zero prevalence test.
The issue about Africa is that the WHO Africa head, Moeti, which is Sido Moeti, is contradicting the Africa CDC head, who says that the fatality rate in Africa is higher than the global average. And she says categorically that is not true. Well, fatality rate may have increased, as Inke Gasong is arguing, but Moeti is saying, well, in absolute terms, the situation in Africa is not as bad. So we have two major agencies, the Africa CDC and the WHO Africa desk, giving us contradictory statements. But what is certain is that, of course, in some of the African countries, like South Africa, like the Democratic Republic of Congo, and also Sudan, the numbers of the infections will seem to be going up. And we go back to that original position about non-pharmaceutical interventions and the responsibility of governments, individuals, and institutions to make sure that Africa does not, with regard to COVID-19, become the next frontier. Now, talking about Nigeria, you raised the issue of Nigeria, that the numbers seem to have gone down to 964. That was the figure reported on Sunday, January 24. Now, 2 days earlier, January 22, the number for Nigeria crossed 2,000.
Yes.
I think it went up as high as 2,624, thereabouts. Initially, on Friday, when that number was reported, we were told that Lagos was not added to the figures. But by Saturday morning, the numbers from Lagos came in, and the Center for Disease Control said, well, this is the absolute numbers that we now have, over 2,000. And that's the highest number that we have had since the first case of COVID-19 in Nigeria. So this 964 that was reported in the last 24 hours, how are we sure that it is accurate? Is it possible that some laboratories, out of the 100 laboratories that we have in Nigeria, have not yet reported their figures? Now, as for Israel, the significant thing about Israel is what it tells us about the position that have been taken by certain scientists in the United Kingdom. And this is a big issue in the United Kingdom. You'll recall that about 2 weeks ago, scientists in the UK were saying that, look, if you take just one dose, yes, that will be enough, and you could extend the gap. But Pfizer came forward to say, look, that was not the data from their own phase 3 clinical trials. They insisted that the only gap that they discovered will be between 3 weeks and 12 weeks, and that they don't have any data to the contrary. Now, what has happened in Israel, where they've been having 24/7, the only country that has been most aggressive, having 24-hour testing, they have now come up with the data that, look, the position taken by some scientists in the United Kingdom is not proven by the data that they have analyzed. And I think that that's an important development, because Pfizer has remained resolute in saying that the outcome of their phase 3 trial, they are going to stand by it. However, in the UK, the argument is that, okay, if you extend the gap between the first dose and the second dose, you will now allow more people to be able to take the dose. But what science tells us from Israel is that that's not a wise option to take. And I hope that the scientists in the United Kingdom will take their cue from this data from Israel, and also the resolute position of the Pfizer BioNTech clinical phase 3 trial, and how they've insisted on it.
And like you said, Dr. Abati, everybody should look to Israel. Israel has vaccinated more people per capita. They have the best peer review on vaccines now in the world as we speak.